To Be by Me, The Shoe. Background music by SF Tracks, double X, find them on SoundCloud. What's got to be? What's got to be? Yo, I'll tell you what's got to be. Nothing's got to be, and that means a lot to me. It makes no sense to thee, but come along with me and soon you'll see what nothing's got to be. Now it is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't. And I know that sounds kinda quaint, but please don't date from these words to live by, this wisdom to give by. Understanding what is and is not, I find myself accepting that a lot. Now the media got us living life in fear, got us running scared like a deer. Is the hunter going to get me today? They shot Bob yesterday, I'd be dead if I was Bob. Good thing my mom insisted on calling me Rob. But they do this just to rob us of our freedom of will. It's more effective than any pill, so we don't realize their repetitive lies. And this is hypnotized by the size of their eyes. I'd say they're wearing a disguise. No one knows what's under the mask, don't bother to ask. It's an impossible task, and if one tries, one dies. Now I know a lot of you don't know what to do, so you open up your door and let others do the thinking for you. You don't have to decide on which side you reside. If you're always on somebody else's side, then you can take your peace, run and hide, and let thinking cease from that which divides the whole nation can't see. Thinking it's got to be, that it ought to be, but that's not to be. So change your ignorant ways. You might think being arrogant pays, but being better than the rock thrown at your face won't save you from disgrace when it cleans your clock. Now it is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't. And I know that sounds kinda quaint, but please don't think from these words to live by, this wisdom to give by. Understanding what is and is not, I find myself accepting that a lot. So she who asks, what can I do? Give me a task or leave my ignorant days, but it's not as simple as a pretty dimple. It's more like popping a big old pimple. You want me to assign you some duty, so when you resign by design, you can say you ought to be, but that's not to be, nothing ought to be. Now that you know me, you can do anything to ease this trembling disease of knowing what ought to be. Let me say it again, nothing ought to be, whether by the standard plot or bizarre thought. Things just are, now let's go far. So things just are and are not to tar the ought to be in me, but soon you'll see when things just are, the picture becomes clear. You start to hold the world dear. Art comes at you like a dart from every element, as if it were sent by the one who came and went before law and order. That's not in disorder. You just need to reorder your mind to take action that's kind. Soon you'll find beneath the rind of ought to be, things aren't so bizarre when they just are, neither good nor bad, told by their mom and dad to judge all they see by ought to be. Shaken not stirred, the world the bird. Ought to be leaves not to be. Happy as a clam, the world's my fam. Now it is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't. And I know that sounds kinda quaint, but please don't date from these words to live by, this wisdom to give by. Understanding what is and is not, I find myself accepting that a lot. Now when you make empathy your primary modality, instead of bestially being a missionary, it leaves the toll taken upon the soul. Believe that got to be desists and not to be persists. So let's have a toast to not to be. You say me, not to boast.